Gentle reminder, dear viewers, just because it's nostalgic doesn't always mean that it's good. Hey everybody, welcome back to A Well-Read Nerd. I'm Amber, and as you can tell by the title and probably why you clicked on this, I am going to be reviewing Hocus Pocus 2 tonight. I actually saw it last night because I have a Disney Plus subscription. I think that's the only way you can see it right now, so negate that. But I watched it last night, and I was going to make a video about this last night, but then I just decided to vacillate on this for like a solid 24 hours before I came at you guys with my opinion. Because it's an opinion. Not everybody is going to agree with me. That is perfectly fine. That being said, let's get into a little bit of generalness about the movie, and then I'll get into my non-spoilery review and then my spoilery review. Mind the timestamps. I'm actually remembering to put them in now. Alright, so this nostalgia bomb that was dropped directly to streaming was directed by Anne Fletcher. Name doesn't ring a bell, that's fine. I had to IMDb her. But she did bring us such classic hits of the last 20 years as 27 Dresses and The Proposal. So she knows how to make movies that are appealing to people. I'm not those people, but good on her for finding her niche. The script itself was written by Jean D'Angelo, who, again, is not a prominent name. In fact, the only big credit, I guess you could say, is the 6 episodes of Workaholics that she did. I'm not knocking either of these women because of their short CV. I'm rather saying that they were perhaps an odd choice for this movie. The original Hocus Pocus, as many fans of it, both new and old, will agree, had a bit of a darker edge to it. Neither one of these women are what I would consider dark, edgy in any way. If you don't know what I mean, there were, like, the witches, the Sanderson sisters in the original, were clearly the villain. There were numerous, basically blatant statements revolving around Satan, hell, like all those darker aspects of witchdom in popular media. Not witchdom in real life. Most Wiccans seem to be perfectly pleasant people from what I've seen over on TikTok, but in media they were definitely designed to be the scary child eating, quite literally in their case, witch villains of old storytelling. That was their archetypal self in the original narrative. And even though it was a children's movie, that did add a darker element to it. Fletcher and D'Angelo don't seem to have anything in their CV that can toe the line between those two things. To have something that can be dark and edgy in an approachable way by general audiences and specifically families, and still have those campy, over-the-top, upbeat moments. So I'm not surprised either woman fell flat when it came to those aspects of doing a Hocus Pocus sequel. Again, a little bit of some other stuff here in a minute. Not anything concrete, just my wild speculation. But yeah, like, there was nothing inherently in their resumes that, like, made me think that they would be uniquely qualified to handle this material. That being said, there is a touch of nostalgia, like I said in the beginning, that they do work into it. These are two people that I can say from the product that they put out might not have heard about Hocus Pocus beforehand. I don't know, I haven't seen anything that they've said because I try to stay clear of that so I can give you my guys' honest opinions and speculations from me watching and consuming the media. But they certainly had in mind that this was a much beloved story that they were attempting to tack on an addendum to. Nothing was grossly mishandled, with the exception of a few things which I will get into in a minute. As for our new cast of young people to take the places of Max, Danny, and Allison from the original, we have Whitney Peak as Becca, Belisa Escobedo as Izzy, and Lilia Buckingham as Cassie. None of these actresses were bad. They were perhaps a little rough in some parts with their performance, but otherwise they did the best with what they had in front of them. What I mean is the plot, which again, I'm just going to keep saying I'll talk about it more later, because I will talk about it more later. It's building to something. People don't just think I'm like trying to get you to keep watching to figure out what I'm going to say. They were perfectly serviceable. They looked like, you know, Disney Channel kids. Like, I know they're probably not actually kids. I could look up their ages. I'm going to bet they're somewhere between, like, they're playing 16-year-olds. I don't know, like 20. I'd say they're in their 20s. Let me look. Okay, so Whitney Peak, who plays Becca. Their names are largely inconsequential in my mind, and we'll get back to that. She's 19, so she's only playing somebody who's 3 years younger than she is. That's a little bit better than the normal, you know, Hollywood standards of casting a 25-year-old play a 15-year-old. But also, given the content, you really don't need somebody much older in order to relay the content, so I can get that too. But in a way, they do come across not as teenagers. Now, I don't know very many, like, actual teenagers. Be kind of weird if I did. My most exposure to teenagers these days are boys who need to stay out of my comment section and go back to playing whatever crappy video game they're playing this week. So maybe, like, that maturity of speech is something that's found commonly from teenagers today. But they come across talking, in my mind, like, when I was watching it, thinking that they were, like, in college. Like, there's a line in the beginning where Becca says something about, like, the patriarchy in referring to how the Sanderson sisters are portrayed. And while, yes, there are many a teenager on TikTok and things like that that might be having conversations about the portrayals of women and the patriarchy and things like that, the way in which she worded it seemed less like something a teenager would say and more like somebody who had just taken an intro to women's studies class in college would say it. It's not what was said, it was how it was said. There was a delivery to it that made it seem older, like a sardonic tone that the actress took, that came across less like a teenager, like, talking about these things, and, like I said, more like somebody who had just finished up women's studies for their first semester. Like, not bad, it was just an odd delivery choice considering you're trying to portray a 16-year-old. The line would have been virtually unchanged, probably would have been exactly worded the same. It was just the way in which it was delivered was weird for a teenager. So there's that. It's the general thing you get a lot of times of, I'm not knocking specifically Hocus Pocus 2 for this. I'm going to knock every single movie in recent memory that has a teenager in it. It's the fact that the scripts are written by adults. The actors and actresses portraying the roles are oftentimes, in this case, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years older than the teenagers they're portraying. Authenticity isn't necessarily achievable anymore at that point. They're still young enough to have a similar mindset, but enough life has passed that the exact nuances that come with that are sort of overlooked. Like, you have somebody who's 19 and goes like, yeah, I could totally play a 16-year-old. I remember what it was like being 16, not realizing that a lot of crap happened in those 3 years, and maybe it was just enough to change things so that you're not exactly the same person you were when you were 16. But again, that is a general critique of Hollywood and all of that. Nothing against these actresses. If anything, it's a slight ding against the director, who probably should have went, I need you to be a little less mature in your delivery. And of course, as you know, the Sanderson sisters are back in this one. It's fine. I'm glad that they managed to get all three of them back, especially with the pandemic and stuff, where they could film this movie. They seem to be greatly enjoying their experience revisiting this role, and that is amazing for them. I am glad they had all the best time in the world while they were filming it. Another character we need to mention, Gilbert. Can we mention Gilbert? Again, I'm not getting spoilery. It's just, did anybody else find his character weird? I'm gonna get into it later in the spoilery part, but if you don't get to that part because you want to go watch this movie and you're just looking for like a general opinion up until we get to that point, that's fine. But if you're somebody who's already watched this and wants to engage in a conversation about it, was his character weird to anybody else? I'm gonna go more in spoiler talk, but if you had a weird vibe from him from scene one and you couldn't quite put your finger on it, but you could put your finger on it of exactly what was weird, comment down below. We could talk about that. Like I said, later on in the video, I'm going to get into some spoilery stuff. I'm going to go more in depth in his character and other characters. So, but yeah, if you had that same, he's a weird character thing from the beginning, comment down below. So yeah, at this point, I'm going to wrap up my non-spoilery talk for anybody who is just here for a little bit of a, hey, should I go watch it? Should I not go watch it? I would say if you had an inclination to seek out a YouTube video about Hocus Pocus 2, go watch it. Go watch it. Go have an enjoyable night like I did. Curl up underneath a cozy blanket, have a drink in hand and just enjoy it. If you are a parent and for whatever reason you're taking advice about what to let your children watch from my YouTube channel, okay, it's perfectly fine for children. They will let you know if they find it inappropriate for themselves. There's just that. Alright, so that ends my spoilery free talk. Now we're going to get into spoiler talk. So if you just came here for the non-spoiler, go ahead, bye. If you liked it up to this point. Comment if you want to. Whatever, maybe my non-spoilery review made you want to go see it. Whatever it is, you can comment down below. For everybody else who wants to go forward with the spoilery talk, the next section is going to be that. Also, if you don't want a spoilery talk, but you want to know what I was talking about, what I was alluding to earlier, skip to the end part of this video, and you can enjoy that. Alright, spoilery talk. Where to begin? First of all, I realize that the Sanderson sisters are pop culture icons, especially to millennials. We all grew up with the reruns of Hocus Pocus on the Disney Channel and all of that. It's our feel-good movie. It's what we love. Who needed the Sanderson sisters to be sympathetic characters? I didn't. They're evil and they eat children. I'm okay with that. But the entire scene at the beginning where you see them as children and you see how they're mistreated by the village and everything else, it's gearing up to make them sympathetic villains. They don't need to be sympathetic villains. They're already complex enough in the beginning, in the first movie. They were three witches who wanted to be young and beautiful forever. So they had a magic spell book that the devil gave them. Keep that in mind. In the original, I think it was explicit. If it wasn't, I will come back in here later after I go rewatch part of Hocus Pocus. It's literal evil. Well, maybe not literal evil, but it's certainly up to no good. Okay, so keep that in mind. So, yeah, they own their element. They had family. They loved each other, even though they were completely dysfunctional. That was the Sanderson sisters. At no point did I ever go, you know what? History just treated them bad. I bet they weren't that bad at all. No, they suck the lives out of little children. It's what they do. It's who they are. It's fine. They're a villain. It doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't need to be this tortured thing or society set them on the path to be the villain. It does not need to be that deep and that complex. Okay? It doesn't. Sometimes the bad guys can just be bad guys. Especially in a cookie cutter world of a Disney movie. Life is never as clear-cut as that. Ever. But in a children's movie, it can be. These are the bad guys. This is why. Moving on. Okay? That is just a critique in general. I think that there has been this push in Hollywood for whatever reason. I guess because they realize that, like, deep down we all like complex villains. But complex doesn't mean sympathetic in the way that I think Hollywood thinks it means. Like, you could have somebody who is deeply troubled and has had all these other things in their life that, like, I can empathize with, right? I can be like, oh, that was really bad. I can see how you ended up where you ended up. But that doesn't mean I sympathize with them. That doesn't mean I inadvertently apologize for their actions because of what was done to them. Okay, that's the difference between a complex villain and a half-assed redemption arc. Okay, so the fact that they tried to shoehorn in a half-assed redemption arc here, I'm gonna get to in the last part, but like, yeah, it did not settle well with me in my soul. Okay, either go full-assed or no-assed. You don't ever go half-assed. Like I said, the child actors were fine. Child actors, teenager actors, adult actors, the ones playing the teenagers, there we go, they were fine. Their delivery was fine. Like, their camaraderie was believable between the characters and with their story. It was, you know, it was a good mix of teenagers. It didn't have the other outsider element that the original did, with basically Max being from LA, moving to Salem, not really belonging, wanting to, like, get with the girl kind of thing. Very, like, 90s-esque. Actually, I watched a TikTok that basically said the original Hocus Pocus is basically a Hallmark movie. And it's not wrong, and I'm not completely mad at it for it. But yeah, it definitely had those elements to it. The new one is very much, these people grew up here. They know the stories. They're entrenched in Salem and everything that's going on. So I don't know, it makes everything seem so much more contrived in a way, because these would have been people who grew up hearing stories. If nobody actually remembered what happened in 1993, okay, it was 1993. I don't care what the movie says. Everything in the original said it took place in 1993, not 1994. In 1993, I don't care, like, how, like, long ago that was. Well, it was a long time ago, but that's beside the point. I don't care how long ago it was. Like, something about that night would have become an urban legend in Salem. If 3 witches were running around, all those people at town hall were hypnotized and dancing all night, all of the children who got, like, swept out into the streets, who didn't know what was going on, which we'll get to in a minute. Like, if all of that happened, okay, you're telling me that there is no urban legend in Salem besides Gilbert's version. That's it. Like, there's nobody going around telling conspiracy theories about the time that the CIA dropped LSD in the water. Like, nothing. It's just a weird guy at the magic shop telling a story to whoever is willing to come into his magic shop around the holidays and do his ghost tours. Like, that is not how, like, local lore goes. There's not just one person saying stuff. There's lots of different versions. Somebody besides the one heckler in the back would have been raising their voice of, like, hey, no, I heard it went this way. Because I've legitimately been in ghost tours in small towns. I went on one in my hometown last year. Like, there are people who will argue about how they heard the legend. So if he's out telling the story, surely there's somebody else. Like, there's, like, literally hundreds of people that would be around his same age who didn't move away from Salem, because it's a huge ass town. Like, they're not going to move away. Like, who would have their own version of what happened that Halloween night. But he's the only one with a story that he's willing to tell anybody. I don't buy it. Now, circling back to just the Gilbert in general. One, in the flashback scene, where you find out that he, like, saw the witches and was, like, obsessed with them. Why was he not under Sarah's spell? Like, remember in the original, she rode out over Salem and sang the song that we were all obsessed with, that we are still obsessed with. I have it in my iTunes right now. Like, you know, come little children, and all the children got up out of bed and they went out into the streets and started going. Well, in the flashback, we see Gilbert, and he's just walking around, and he sees the witches heading towards the cemetery for the big confrontation at the end of Hocus Pocus. At no point does he mention that he's missing time, doesn't know where he is, nothing, like the entire night was a blur. He just remembers seeing the witches. So was he not under the magic spell? This is a legitimate question, and I have legitimate, like, curiosities. Like, was he not under the spell? Okay, another thing, he totally killed somebody. Which, yeah, I know is dark, but, like, yeah, because, again, if I'm recollecting the original correctly, and I will correct myself if I am wrong, the black flame candle was made from the fat of a hangman. Either a hangman or a hanged man. I forget which one it was. Which means it was either the person doing the killing or the person who was killed, okay? Either way, if Gilbert made another black flame candle, the Salem PD are going to be looking for him. Like, he possibly murdered somebody. Like, legitimately murdered somebody to make a magic candle. Keep that in your head. Also, his obsession with them, and, like, it was just a little weird. Especially because he's, like, goofy and, like, everything else, and he's not treated as an actual villain. I think complicity for evil is definitely a villainesque trait. But whatever. I mean, he was the only adult POC character. So, like, maybe they didn't want to straight up make him a villain. Who knows? Overall, like I said, the girls are fine. I do want to talk about the boyfriend. I don't remember his name. I just kept referring to him as idiot in my head while I was taking mental notes. Like, the dude is a bully. Like, their friend is dating a bully. And he goes like, no, I didn't know I was being mean. And, like, he's dumb. But, like, I think it's a terrible message with the amount of bullying that happens in the world to go, like, you know, maybe they're not actually bullies. Maybe they're just idiots who don't know how to talk to people. Not a big fan of that messaging. I mean, it could have been worse. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it. He was an idiot. I did take somewhat enjoyment out of when the witches were torturing him. Not actually torturing him, but like running him down on the brooms. I did like that. A little bit of schadenfreude for the day. But now we're getting into the ending. The entire plot for this movie was about gaining power. Winifred wanted to be the most powerful. Which I don't know why they went with that, because, like, she wanted to be young, like, and beautiful, and, like, wouldn't have made more. I know they didn't want to rehash the original, okay? I know that. Like, nobody wants to watch rehash. But at the same time, her shtick was eating children, like, sucking out their life force. And now she wants to do this other spell that makes them all powerful. Like, it's like a MacGuffin or unobtainium or something like that. Like, it just feels like something that was made up for the point of the plot so it wouldn't rehash as opposed to anything organic through the storytelling. Personal opinion. And then the end, when she gets what she wants. She gets all that power, and then she realizes that it's at the expense of her sisters. And then she feels remorse for it. I'm sorry. The Winifred Sanders of the original might have felt a little guilty about killing her sisters for ultimate power, but she would have done it anyway. Or at least been like, I'm so sad. Tear. Okay, I'm just going to take my ultimate power and go now. Like, she was a little bit of a sociopath. Okay? So the fact that you have this new one that's like, oh no, my sisters, I can't go without my sisters thing is kind of, again, contrived is the word that comes to mind. And then of course you have the one chick, Becca, I can think I'm getting these names right, who you find out she's a witch and she has powers, but she's a good witch. Okay. The story doesn't do anything to explain to us the difference between bad witches and good witches. Do all witches start out good? I mean, it's implicit, but not explicitly stated that that's the case. Especially considering the only other witch that we find, or that we meet, is at the very beginning, and she's looking to suck the souls out of some little children and stay young and beautiful forever. So obviously, the moral compass doesn't exactly point north. So, like, is Becca destined to be sort of morally ambiguous when she realizes she has the ability to sort of bend and twist reality to her whims? Like, I watched that movie, but there's no way it's getting aired on Disney, so... In any case, the entire ending was rather lackluster, okay? I did like the fact that Doug Jones reprised his role as Billy Butcherson, but that's beside the point. I love Doug Jones in anything. I sat through The Shape of Water for him. Weird fish love is not my thing. Like, it's just not. Anyways, we're back to the thing that I was going to talk about. The entire reason why I really made this video. Okay, I want to talk about the movie, like, because nobody in my personal life really cares about this movie. But I want to talk about the Disneyfication of Hocus Pocus. And you might be thinking, hey, it's a Disney movie. It's like, yes, but it's an old school Disney movie. Standards and procedures were a little bit different back at Disney back then. Disney was more of a repository of movies as opposed to a brand like we see today. Meaning that everything has to be everything has to be within the scope of the Disney brand. Okay? The Disney brand is a box. It must fit into the box. They don't like veering too far outside of the box at all. It's the reason why all they've been doing is like live action remakes of movies that they already did, and like weird things that just seem like they're a copy of something else that they already did. But their only like exceptions to this are like original stories that are being told by BIPOC creators like Coco and Soul. I didn't like Soul as much as I like Coco, sorry. Or Encanto. Like, they are new stories breathing new life into Disney. And they don't, because they're talking about different things, they don't feel exactly as Disney brand as other things do. They are very much Disney brand. You can, you know, chop them up and cut them into bits and you can see exactly how they fit into the Disney formula. There's just enough difference in there that it makes it seem like it's something new and exciting. Okay? Again, that's nothing against the creators that created those movies or anything else. It's just the kind of world you live in when you deal with Disney. So then you have Hocus Pocus 2. Like I said, the original had a much grittier feel to it. I mean, like, you see the cat die several times. Like, the mom's wearing a Madonna costume. There's outward references to hell and Satan and all of that. Like, the details of sucking the lives out of little children, eternal torment. Winifred's famous line when Billy Butcherson tells her to go to hell, and she tells him that she found it quite nice, meaning that when they died, they went to hell. Like, all of that in the new one has been scrubbed. It's been scrubbed clean. It's fully why I believe they went with the ultimate power thing instead of the sucking the lives out of little children thing. Yes, they didn't want to rehash it, but also they could have done something just as, like, evil as that. They could have come up with something else. However, they didn't do it. And the reason why is because they were trying to sanitize their own movie. Disney does this a lot, okay? Especially for, like, things that are family friendly. It wants to be as unassuming and as, what's the word I'm looking for? It wants to be as accepted by the largest group of people possible. Which means, like, no controversial content in it. Like, cookie cutter, like, characters. Like, the girls. As much as I don't have a problem with any of the actors, I don't really have a problem with the script. They legitimately seem like they could have been plopped out of any other made-for-Disney movie or Disney Plus original, and and they would have been the same characters. Like, they felt like there was nothing unique about the characters, okay? And that's a big problem with Disney that we're seeing more and more of, especially as they go back into their bag of tricks for like old nostalgia and coming out with sequels for things. I also watched Under Wrap 2, or Under Wrap, is it Under Wraps? The one with the mummy. I watched that today, which I might make a video about because I have some thoughts. But like, they're digging into their old bag of tricks for things. And when they're doing that, they're realizing that the things that were okay for children back then aren't okay for children now. Or I should say, aren't going to get, like, I don't know, whatever weirdo group is on Facebook this day, up in arms about how they're corrupting the children. Okay? Nobody back when I was a kid thought that this movie was going to be, it was going to like make me a Satanist or anything. They probably should have, because there's like a lot of humanist elements in there, but that's beside the point. You could also blame the Ninja Turtles and Captain Planet for why your kid became a Satanist, but in any case, I digress. The point is there were things that now don't do well for family-friendly content that you could get away with back then, and it'd still be considered family-friendly content. And I'm kind of sick of Disney doing that. Like, I really am. I'm sick of the sanitation of it. People talk about like wokeness and stuff with Disney, and I'm like, whatever, because there's like a BIPOC character, or like there's a like a gay character somewhere in the background or something, and that means they're woke. No, they're not. They're business. Okay? The problem is they are sacrificing art for business. That is my complaint here. They are sacrificing what could have been even better for something that is mediocre, because it fits better into their brand, into their box. This is Disney approved kind of thing. And like, I'm just sick and tired of it. I am. Like, I'm tired of it. It makes everything seem stale and styrofoam and regurgitated. And yes, I know 90% of it is regurgitated purely for the sake of nostalgia. That doesn't mean it has to be boring, okay? And this movie, in a lot of ways, was boring. I never felt invested in the characters. And you might go, well, that's because they're teenagers, Amber. Well, I can get invested in a teenager's life in a movie, especially where I already have to suspend disbelief because there's witches and stuff involved with like actual magical lightning fingers. Like, fine, but like, I want to feel like I am invested in the journey with them. I want to feel like I am a part of the story. Okay? And at no point did I feel that with this movie. At no point. Instead, it just felt like another cookie cutter, paint by number Disney movie. It was unremarkable. It was fun. Like, don't get me wrong. I had a great time, like, watching along, seeing the Sanderson sisters sing, like, seeing all these little nods and stuff to the original, like, seeing just, like, in general how the plot went. It was fine. It was an hour and some minutes, I don't remember how long, of perfectly banal enjoyment. But nobody in 30 years is going to be talking about Hocus Pocus 2. Nobody. It is not going to be anybody's go-to Halloween movie. It will never feel like a warm, cozy blanket when you sit down to watch it because you remember watching it when you were a kid. And I even mean kids who are watching this, because I asked a child and her exact words were, "It was fine." So like, yeah, just think about that. Like, children are watching this. If your child watches it with you and you ask them how it was and they don't go like, "Oh my god, I want to watch it again and again," if they go, "It was fine," then like, that's how you know. And that's exactly what Hocus Pocus 2 is. It is fine, okay? I think, honestly, 100% truth, if they had cut out the fact that this was a sequel to Hocus Pocus, if they had made a completely original, actual story, okay, about a teenage witch and her friends, and set it on Halloween, and had like some kind of MacGuffin like thing that they had to fix by the end of it, I think that would have been a better movie, because they would have had to have done something creative with it. This movie felt like they already knew they had an audience, and then so they scrubbed everything out of it to put it on brand, and then they put it out there and went, everybody's going to love it because it's Hocus Pocus 2. And the answer is not everybody's going to love it. Most of us are going to go, it was fine. The wine made it better. Like, that is just the truth of it. So yeah, that's my Hocus Pocus 2 review. What did you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Comment down below. If you like this video and you want to keep seeing more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button. If you just enjoyed this video and don't feel like ever seeing my face again, just hit the like button. It's cool. I have more stuff coming out in the coming weeks. A lot more stuff. I'm working on it right now. My filming space is going to get disrupted for a while, so I'm hoping to get everything filmed ahead of time so I don't have any more weird lapses, like with being able to get videos out to you. The other ones were just work related. Like, I ended up having to stay over late from work a couple of nights, and then after I made dinner, I just didn't feel like filming or editing. That was it. Like, it's just new job adjustments. But yeah, hopefully I will get everything out to you guys soon. Until then, happy Halloween.